schools. Now, when we talk about technology integration in Ghana, most often we confuse it with devices and computer labs. I think it's time as a country we move beyond just curing of devices and all that to actually building technology integration from its foundations.
Welcome to another exciting episode of the Let's Talk Education Africa podcast. I'm guessing we are still very much in the new year. So everybody listening, Happy New Year. If you haven't heard my voice this year, wishing you all the very best that 2024 has to offer. For those in the education space, more grease to your elbows, especially those coming up with innovations, especially in the EdTech space. Teachers coming up with creative ways of transferring knowledge, school administrators, etc. All of the hands and stakeholders that come together to make education possible in their classrooms, in my beautiful country, Ghana, and all across the world. I'm wishing you all the very best of 2024. I don't know, but I'm particularly excited about what this year has to offer. Day in, day out, I get to mingle, I get to network, and I'm meeting some rather amazing people in the education space. And this journey has been exceptionally great. I get to see really passionate individuals who are, putting and contributing their quota to the sort of education we want to see in Ghana and on the continent. Today I have one amazing person that I met, interestingly, not long ago. And he's a passionate educator. He's an EdTech enthusiast. He is especially focused on training and professional development. And there was this thing I saw when I was researching him, where he says he's building engaging communities for educators and education professionals. He's also the CPD associate at the Ghana Society of Education Technology, where they are focused on promoting STEM-based technical and social innovations in every area of education and training. With me today to do this is Selorm Dzreh. Nobel, it's fantastic to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Kwame. I'm also excited to be here. And good morning to all listeners and your audience across Africa. I'm so excited to be here to engage with you, Kwame.
Awesome. I'm really excited to have you here. Ever since I, started, dipping my feet in the education space, one thing I've come to realize is, for anybody who is actively involved, you have to be passionate. There's something about education that requires your commitments, that requires a certain level of passion for you to even begin to want to come up with a solution, to the myriad of problems that we have. And immediately I met you, I felt it immediately. And so I'm not surprised you are active. You've been active in the space for a while. And I'm excited. I'm excited to have this conversation with you. And then, just for you to share insights and get to know the wonderful work you're doing at GSET. So let's start like this. Could you give us a brief introduction of yourself?
Yeah, as you rightly said, Kwame, I'm actually a trained teacher from the Akachi College of Education. I thought for a moment, and during my time of teaching, I found a part of education that I felt I was really very passionate about and I could really contribute to. So while I was teaching in national service, I realized that I found myself most of the time supporting teachers on staff to be able to integrate technology in various ways into their teaching and learning. And that was when I challenged upon the Ghana Society for Education Technology. That is a professional membership organization for teachers in Ghana. And I was like, wow. So this is an organization that has like a great network of teachers who are also like looking for opportunities to use technology to teach in their classroom. So I said, why not do more of what I'm actually doing here at my national service on a national scale? So I reached out, there was an opportunity at GSET for the CPD associate role. And so that was when I decided I was going to join the Ghana Society for Education Technology. I'm sure someone might be wondering, then how do you teach them? So what I did was I took a swing from the Ghana Education Service to join the Ghana Society for Education Technology to be able to do more of what I felt would be able to contribute to education on a greater scale. So yeah, so that's just a bit of my journey. So far, what I've been doing is to personally, on a personal level, encouraging young people to take up digital skills, teaching digital skills to people. And then while I'm at it, I've also become a certified data analyst by the African Leadership Foundation. Also a bit of data analytics, a bit of education, a bit of supporting teachers to use technology to teach. And that's what I'm doing at the Ghana Society for Education Technology this far.
Awesome. Really, really interesting story. But I want to backtrack a bit, right? So you mentioned you're a trained teacher, and one of the questions I typically ask all my guests is, I want you to give me a context, right? A context in your childhood that you believe, right, has influenced the path that you are on today, right? Was there something in your childhood that sort of nudged you to become a teacher, and then consequently get you into this CPD role at GSET? Or you even actively involved in the education space?
Okay, on top of my head, the memory that always flashes my mind when people kind of ask, like, what has been my motivation to want to become a teacher, dates back to class 4. There was this teacher, I think I can remember her first name, she's Madam Lydia, who gave an activity. I think it was just a simple question, a science question back then, when she asked, what's the normal body temperature of a human being? And this was me attempting a question after having read a material that was not related to what was in our notes and all that. So by answering the question, there was this prize that was supposed to be won. It was just a pack of chocolates. Then it was not, now that's not like a big prize, but then to have received that as an award in front of the whole class was to me something very inspiring. Fast forward to the junior high school, I also met some very wonderful teachers, and to the senior high school as well. And I thought to myself, what wonderful things some of those teachers have done that has to do with it. I feel they were better teachers. And so when I got the opportunity to go to the training college, I decided that I was going to be that kind of teacher that I didn't always get when I was in the classroom. So making sure that students are listened to, students are spoken to in a way that goes beyond the traditional classroom. Because I felt the teachers that built close relationships with me, I wanted to become more like them, right? So I wanted to be that kind of a teacher to as many students as possible. It was from that motivation to become a teacher that led me to finding out that if I could support more teachers to be better teachers, improve the way they teach, I could be making some real impact instead of me reaching out to the students. So if I can reach 30 students, but I can actually reach 30 teachers who can then reach 30 students each, that would be like a great impact. So that's like the kind of story that motivated me to come into the education space.
Really interesting. I mean, as we speak, there's this really captivating quotes that I chanced upon, I think last year. Yeah, it was last year. And it says, a good teacher is like the rising sun that comes to fill the empty and dark minds with the light of the education. And I mean, as an aside, and I'm sure I'd invite you over for us to have that separate discussion about how critical the teachers are in this whole drive, the sort of education that we seek to have in our country and across the continent. And, highlighting the points that teachers are an incredibly important aspect to this whole education drive. And that's, being called a teacher is much more than just, passing on knowledge or passing on skill. You are literally molding the minds of the next generation. So aside parents who, create the environments, that conducive environments for children to grow and all of that, when the children are transferred to school and they are handed over to teachers, I want to unpack that.
I think I get the perspective.
It's no joke, yeah.
Yeah, teaching is a very good job. It requires a lot of experience. It's not just something everybody else can do. I don't think so.
I agree.
There's this popular quote that everyone can cook. Everyone can try to impact knowledge, but not everyone can do it with all the awareness that surrounds the science of teaching and learning.
I like the word you've used, awareness.
Children. Yeah. So with that level of consciousness, I don't think everyone has it. And that's why I believe that the greatest point of consideration in terms of impacting education in Ghana is actually ensuring that teachers are being built into a level where like the quality is seen. Once you enter every Ghanaian classroom, you can see this teacher knows what it's about. He understands the theory, he understands the science, he understands the social aspects of education, and you can see all that at play in the classroom. And so until we get to that point where we are training teachers to that level of quality, that level of awareness, and actually providing them all the resources they need in order for them to impact, we are really not going to see so much impact, even if we are introducing the latest technology or what have you. And that's why I love working at the Ghana Society for Education Technology, because then our focus, which is continuous professional development for teachers, is actually building the capacity of the teachers, not just those in training, but those who are already teaching in the classroom. And so that's the part of my work, which is supporting teachers to be able to improve what they do in the classroom. Yeah.
It's great work because, I mean, like I mentioned earlier, just dipping my toes in the education space has just made me realize how if we joke in the classroom, oh boy, we are really going to suffer the bad end of that lack of seriousness, because it's a big job, and I'm realizing how much of a big job it is. It's a Herculean task, and listen, I am in awe of that particular aspect that you've taken on, your entity has taken on, because I believe it's a very, very critical part of the whole educational process. Awesome. No, but we are going to get into, some areas a bit. So I want to ask you about, just give me your brief take on the education space in Ghana.
Okay. So two things. The first one I want to talk about is foundational literacy and numeracy. And then the next one I'll talk about is technology integration when it comes to education. So for foundational literacy and numeracy, for many of the schools that we have visited, for many of the classrooms I've taught in, and so for many of the friends I have who are teaching in rural and urban areas, the main issue they always talk about is students' ability to read and do simple mathematics. That's literacy and numeracy. It has been like the main challenge they face in their schools. So beyond the subjects that they teach, whether computing, whether English language, teachers realize that the biggest challenge students are faced with is foundational literacy and numeracy. And in schools where some of the numeracy and the literacy level of students are addressed, you see that students begin to excel in all other parts of their learning process, whether it's a different subject or whatsoever. So we need to, as a country, have a primary focus on building the literacy and numeracy capacity of learners. And that's why it's clear many of the think tanks, international think tanks have been investigating in Africa. We find that foundational literacy and numeracy is one of the greatest challenges that is faced with education. And I would like to tie that to technology uptake in the schools. Now, when we talk about technology integration in Ghana, most often we confuse it with devices and computer labs. I think it's time as a country we move beyond just curing of devices and all that to actually building technology integration from its foundations. As I said earlier, GSET will focus on continuous professional development because that's for us is the most cost-effective way of breaking through the education system in terms of our technology integration efforts. Teachers' capacity need to be built. You can build computer labs for the school. Once the teachers don't know how to use it, it's going to be there. Excuse me to say, it's not going to be utilized to the best of its options that are available to it. Same thing applies to if it is tablets you are giving to students and teachers cannot use those tablets to teach their learners. It's not going to really amount to so much impact. And so even though we are trying to encourage learner-centered approaches in terms of technology integration, we need to also focus on the pedagogical aspects. How does technology come in when a teacher wants to apply certain strategies to their teaching and learning? So as a country, whilst we are talking about infrastructure, we need to also talk about like a nationwide intervention that is targeted towards building the capacity of teachers to be able to use technology in the classroom. And most of the time, what happens is that when organizations want to take this initiative of building the capacity of teachers, they have a very short term kind of target. So sometimes it's a project that is going to last 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. But when you look at other countries that have been successful in their technology integration efforts, you realize that this has happened over a period of years. There are countries that have like done this over a very long time before even trying to implement programs that take 2-3 years. So I think we need to have like a national agenda. People talk about education as just a sector of the country's economy, but I think that if we can fix the problem of education in Ghana, fix many of the challenges that face education, we would have ended up fixing a lot of challenges in other sectors, whether it's in finance, whether it's in production or whatsoever. So that's like the two perspectives I want to bring about. We need to have like a national intervention focus on what we want when we talk about technology integration in education. And then we need to link that to making sure that we are building the literacy and numeracy capacity of our learners. Without that, we are still at a standstill. We need to solve the literacy and numeracy problem and then solve the IT literacy issues that we have, both for the learners and then for those who are leading the sector, that is the teachers. So those are what I want to share with you briefly, Kwame.
Interesting. I mean, I was listening to you, and I remember I had a conversation with, I think, the senior programs officer at the Africa Education Watch, Mr. Divine.
Yeah.
And he gave some, yes, Divine Pay, yes. He gave some rather, some pretty, not so great stats about what's going on in the education space. So apparently we have 1 million children who have never been to school in Ghana. We are having a situation where over 400,000 children have dropped out of school. And when it comes to quality education issues, he pointed to the fact that the national standard tests, we are having about 54% passing literacy.
Yes.
Well, I mean, the obvious ones, there's clearly a deficit when it comes to quality teachers. There's a lack of teaching and learning resources. There's also the nature and structure of our school environment, etc. And there's one stat that I want to throw at you as well. He mentioned that we are having a situation where we have public schools growing at 100%. We're having them increasing by 100% year on year. And we also have this, but when you compare that to public schools, right, we're having a situation where it's growing by only 4%, a measly 4%. And so I'm listening to what you're saying, and I agree with you. To be honest, I agree with you that there has to be a sharp focus on foundational literacy and numeracy because it really affects everything. And then the conversations and technology, integration, etc. But just with the stats that I've shared with you now, what would you say? I want your take on it first.
I've come across that research and the outcome of the standard test that was conducted. I share in the grievances that were shared by the African Education Watch about the growing numbers in our schools year on year and the performance on literacy and numeracy. But I'm not surprised about the literacy and numeracy performance of the learners. I think that has been proven on a national and international stage already. What needs to be our focus is how we are using data to actually inform the decisions that we make in government. Are we still focusing on political promises? And when I say political promises, we are in a campaign season and various aspirants are still making promises. What is informing the kind of policies they want to implement when they come into government? Those are the things I think we should be focusing on, because if we know that our schools are increasing in population by 100%, what's the plan for infrastructure development? What's the plan for recruiting more teachers to the student? Because we still have a very poor teacher to learner ratio in Ghana, extremely very poor. What are the conditions that we are setting up in the very rural areas and even in the urban areas to ensure that teachers feel comfortable, they are best, they have the resources they need in their schools to be able to improve teaching and learning? Because once we know these things, luckily we are able to have that data to be able to know that these are the needs that will come up with it. How are we putting in efforts as various education stakeholders, NGOs, ministries of education, to ensure that we are accessing the right funding to be able to address this critical challenge that facing the country? Or are we still focusing on just communicating figures and impact or our strengths? But for me, there are more challenges facing education than the achievements that we have as a country. So beyond saying that we have many students enrolled in free senior high school education, the question then is, what efforts are we making to increase infrastructure for the increasing numbers we even have at the basic schools, right? The lack of infrastructure, many schools do not have computer labs. And I said, of course, teachers' capacity need to be built, but this infrastructure also need to be ready in order for us to be able to manage the numbers that are currently coming. So those are the brief things and concerns I think that we should be looking at. Interventions that are informed by data. I think that will really help the country instead of making promises that citizens generally want to hear about from political leaks.
I mean, I totally agree with you. And I believe that one of the areas that, unfortunately, policy people are not actually looking at is the question of what sort of human resource do we want to have in, say, 10 years, in 20 years, in 30 years, right? And then we sort of, once we're able to answer that, we ask ourselves how we are going to leverage on education, how we are going to leverage on technology, and how we are going to leverage on all the other elements to be able to create that sort of human resource for the 20 years to come. And I mean, if you look around, all of these developed nations around, from the Scandinavian countries, including Finland, Sweden, and etc., all the way to the West and Americas and Europe, etc., and including China. The very recent example is China, where you can clearly see that they are answering the question of how do we want to see our human resource? What capacity do we want to, or what capacity, what value, right? Who do we want to see in 20 years, 30 years, 50 years? And how they are leveraging all the other elements to create that sort of individuals, right? Indigents for their country. But there seems to be that missing piece in the conversation. And so what you realize is, like you rightly alluded to, it's the whole, political rhetoric, campaign messages, and so on and so forth. And the real work that is supposed to be, tackled on the ground is just lost. And it's quite a sad situation.
So basically, as we were saying, you talked about China, so I'm going to take it from that perspective. As a country, of course, we need to decide the kind of skill set we want in our young people in 5 years, in 10 years, and all that. But there is also this communication becomes a relevant factor to consider here. You mentioned China. In China, even though English is used there, they have a language that is like nationalized. That does not require so much investment. Unlike that, when you come to Ghana, English is our official language for that matter. But then you ask yourself, how many interventions are in a way communicated to learners their first language, their local tongue? There are a few of those. So we need to first, now we know that we can't actually nationalize one language in this country because we are a multicultural country. So what we want to be able to do is to make sure that we are getting the literacy and numeracy up, because English is going to be the formal language of Ghana for God knows how long. So we need to put in more effort to build that literacy and numeracy capacity of teachers. And generally, there is this perception. I remember from my days in school, when you go to a normal school, you go to the kindergarten, what happens is that, excuse me, forgive me for this, but it's like the teachers who are in maternity, the female teachers, they are the ones who are sent to the lower schools, like the kindergarten. But this is where the building of the learning starts from, teaching and learning, and how students come to understand how they write, how they speak. This is where that kind of foundational learning needs to come from. So even though we are talking about literacy and numeracy, we really need to look at our early childhood education system as well. How building the capacity of teachers who are teaching at the early grades to effectively help students pick up the language at a very young, because at that age is when they are able to actually pick up speaking and writing abilities. And we miss that point of focusing on that. Because when you look around and you ask yourself how much funding is going into early childhood education, if you get the figures, it will be very low, right? Even just by looking at it, I can tell it's very low. So we need to focus a bit on that as well to build the capacity of the learners from that stage. Once the issue of speaking and writing and basic numeracy is solved, then we can talk about what kind of youth do we want to build in this country. Then our curriculum must also follow in that direction. Because then if we want this country to be a country where you have technology inclined, we can't continue to have programs that are focused on social sciences if we want to build a technology-focused economy. Of course, I'm not saying that those other programs should be scrapped off, but the focus should be clear. right? If you're offering scholarships, it should reflect the kind of scholarships you're offering in terms of your national priority. But if you continue to focus on law, even if we want to focus as a country on building the next generation of people who are law experts, we can do that. But then that focus needs to be clear right from the word go. But then we must still make sure that the issue of numeracy and literacy is solved. But it should be a system such that when the next Minister of Education comes, his priority and interest does not take us off that trajectory. Otherwise, we put in many efforts that are not actually getting us to a point where we all want to go as a country when it comes to education. So I think that conversation needs to start to agree a national agenda.
You are absolutely spot on. you couldn't have broken it down, any better. It absolutely makes sense what you're saying. And so what's the picture that is visible for all to see, right? Is everything is happening in fragments when it's supposed to all come together to achieve a certain specific outcome for, if you like, in this particular situation, Ghanaians, and what we would like to see in maybe 20, 30 years. And I quickly want to touch on the bit where you highlighted the fact that not much attention is being given to the early child development, sector. And you are spot on when you say that's where everything is happening. That's where everything starts. That's where the foundation is built. And so the analogy I like to use is that when the foundation is strong, you can decide to build a skyscraper. If the foundation is not strong, you dare not try. You might as well just build a hut, a mud hut, and everything will be fine. But for the human capacity to, give off its very best in our pursuit of overall progress and development that we would like to see and enjoy as a country for from generation to generation, there clearly has to be a certain concerted effort as to answering the question of what it is, what do we want to see? You're spot on that. You're absolutely spot on that. Interesting conversation so far. I hope my listeners are, picking up a thing or two. And if you have any contributions, please feel free to put them on our social media pages when this is posted. Noble, I'd like to delve into GSET, right? The Ghana Society for Education Technology. What's this organization about? I know you've touched on it a bit, but I think this segment of the conversation is going to, put the spotlights on that. Who are they? How long have they been in existence? What are they trying? What's their mission, vision, etc.? Yes, take it away.
Okay. So the Ghana Society for Education Technology, as I already said, it's a community of, teachers and education experts, but primarily teachers who have come together to contribute to their professional development. And by professional development, I mean anything surrounding what can help them become better teachers. So we talk about technology integration, we talk about communities of practice, we talk about sharing of resources, we talk about teacher meetups, we talk about professional learning communities. Generally, anything that is targeted at what they want to do as teachers. So at GSET, we do quite a number of things. And this is to also talk about technology integration. So these are teachers who come together to contribute to their professional development. Now, part of what we do is to also ensure that we are providing a good ecosystem for various EdTech products that are targeted at improving teaching and learning also come to the space. So for the past 5 years, as an organization, we've been collaborating with various education stakeholders to organize education technology events, EdTech events, just like what we had the last time, the National EdTech Testbed Forum, right? We have also been hosting, since 2019, we've been hosting the Global EdTech Startup Awards Africa, right? Where various EdTech products owners, innovators come around and they bring what they are working on. Some are products, some are programs, to kind of show to the world what they've been doing. And those who win from here get the opportunity to participate in an event in London where they pitch their product to get access to funding in order for us to, in order for them to build a product in such a way that it's ready to come to our classroom. The teachers have the capacity to use those technologies. So that's what we've been doing primarily at GSET. And over the years, we've been collaborating with many organizations, the Ghana Education Service, the Ministry of Education, and most recently, the Transforming Teaching, Education, and Learning (TETEL). So we are trying to make sure that we are putting in all the efforts and the expertise in order to make sure that education works, regardless of the intervention. So you see that we work with many organizations, so long as they're talking about education, they're talking about teachers. The basic thing we want to make sure happens is that in all of these interventions, regardless of who is coming from, teachers who are informed about their practice, that's our members, actually are voicing out the concerns that they really have. Sometimes there is this gap that exists between programs that have been implemented and then the voice of teachers in those programs. We may think something may work, but when we don't have the input of the teachers, we are not able to tell. And it takes the input of an informed teacher to be able to refine these interventions to work. That's what we have been doing at GSET over the last few years through consultation, technical support, and advocacy as well.
Interesting, really interesting. And the session that I happened to join, I think last week, was incredibly insightful. I really appreciated how Alison, the professor from UCLA, I believe, unpacked the conversations that were happening around, how to research for your EdTech product, etc., and so on and so forth. And so, from what I gather, it's there's the continuous teacher training development bits, and then there's also the focus on tech and how it can be integrated into the classroom to get the effective to get the outcomes that it is that we want. That's really interesting. And it's been in existence for how long?
It's been in existence for the last 5 years.
For the last 5 years, that's really awesome. Yes. That's really, really awesome.
So we started off as just a community of teachers coming together to share knowledge, and then it's moved from there. The membership grew, and then we realized that this could be something wonderful, and then registered in 2019 as an organization, an NGO, and then took off from there.
Okay.
And on this note, I'd like to express my appreciation to the executive director and founder, Miracle Gavo. I'm sure you've already met him.
Yes, I have. Yes.
The leadership, Nana Duda, sorry, not Nana Duda, not the president.
Right. Okay.
Elizabeth, and it's Gavo, who have been like top of leadership, and our amazing 16 regional coordinators who will help us coordinate activities across all the 16 regions. We are very grateful for their efforts.
Awesome. And what I experienced last Thursday is testament to the fact that we have a passionate group of individuals who have decided to come together and then channel their efforts to bring the whole conversation of continuous teacher development, and then also exploring the different aspects, including leveraging technology, to see how we can marry the two to get the sort of outcomes that we want in our classroom. Yeah, really, really good job you guys are doing. And so I want to ask, I like to hear success stories. So could you touch on, some success stories that GSET has achieved during this 5 years of existence?
Okay. So try to start from, this was in 2019 into 2020 when COVID hit. Schools didn't know what to do, especially when it comes to school leadership, circuit supervisors, and so GSET stepped in 2020. So in 2019, there was more of like setting up the organization. Because teachers were still meeting, we were having our meetups. I said that the organization started as teachers coming together to learn. So that was in 2019 until COVID hit in the late part and earliest part of the late part of 2019 and the earliest part of 2020. So what we did as GSET was that we realized the education leaders were having challenges in terms of how they are going to transition from the traditional teaching environment to what options there are for them to learn. So we brought together the circuit supervisors from all around Accra to train them on how they can support their teachers and their schools to transition to online teaching and learning. For the schools that had infrastructure, that was well done. For other schools that didn't have that, we kind of like employed community centers and radio stations to help the teachers still continue to engage on the students in one or two activities so that learning is not totally gone off. So that was what we did primarily in 2019 and 2020 until 2021, where COVID had faded out in a bit and things were a bit normalizing. So what we continued in 2021 was organizing more of the teacher meetup. We did that on a nationwide scale, primarily with our members, but I realized that was when our membership actually grew. So we grew the membership to ensure that they had fun, talked about education, key issues, and then they shared innovative strategies they employ in their classroom. 2022 was one of the big years for us at GSET because then we gained our accreditation from the National Teaching Council to be a certified training organization across the country. And we were recognized by the Ghana Education Service for our efforts in training teachers. So we had our credibility from the ministry's agencies of what we're doing to support education. So we went on to train 1,500 teachers within the New Job in North and Job in South, that's in the Eastern region, and the Akachi North districts across the country on various education policies. Because what we realized was that our teachers were telling us that, of course, there are these policies that are ongoing, but many of them did not know about what the policy was about. So we had a sensitization on educational policies in the country with teachers. And we saw how the knowledge of these policies were actually helping teachers appreciate efforts of the educational leaders and policy people, and how education is actually changing from what everyone else can do to the various interventions that are helping improve the system. From there, we went on to look at what options are there for technology integration. So we went on to collaborate with organizations like Instill Education. We collaborated with Inspire Learn, Teaching and Learning, which is an open learning management system, just to make sure that teachers have enough open educational resources to be able to improve the teaching and learning efforts that they do. So that's what we've been doing until last year, 2023. We are now looking to collaborate with, I mentioned the Transforming Teaching, Education and Learning, where we are currently leading on the digital literacy and ICT integration program. We are actually supporting the ministry's agencies, not leading it. We are supporting the ministry's agencies to help build the capacity of all senior high school teachers to be able to use technology to improve their teaching and learning activities in their classrooms. So that's what we've been doing, and that has led us into 2024. This year, we are hoping to do more, provide teachers with more opportunities to meet through EdCamps and forums and all that. So that's what we started with the National EdTech Testbed. So moving forward, we're going to have more education camps, EdCamps, teacher meetups across the country. So that's what we are looking for. So if there are people who share similar interests, of course, our social media handles are always there. You can always reach out to us. And we look to increase the impact and opportunity for teachers to collaborate.
Absolutely. And for me, as I was listening, the common thread that ran through all of the successes that you've chalked is the fact that there's a sharp focus on ensuring that the teacher is developed or is trained, is given some training, or the teacher is nurtured, continuously to the point where they are up to date, right? Just like we update our operating systems for our iPhones and our Samsungs and so on and so forth. It's very important that the individuals who are leading the charge in terms of education in our classroom are updated, right? Their operating systems are updated from time to time to ensure that they are able to meet the challenges of the time. Listen, I mean, it goes back to the initial conversation we were having earlier about the fact that to be called a teacher, in fact, to run a school and be a teacher is a Herculean task. It's a huge job, right? Because I think if we look at it and I think you use two words that stand out to me: the fact that it has to be one that has a certain level of self-awareness, one, and then number two, has an awoken consciousness, right? Because it's not only about the fact that, I like the analogy you used of everybody can cook. Everybody can indeed cook something. Everybody can put something together. But it takes somebody who, pays attention, right? Is self-aware, is conscious of how to put everything together to make sure that that meal comes out in a way that's, satisfies and makes everybody happy around them. And for me, teachers are at the heart. Right, teachers are really at the heart of education, and so even when I hear there's certain conversations I have had or have chance to hear where, especially in speaking about technology integration, etc., in the classrooms, there's this idea that is being pushed that over time teachers will be kicked out, and I say no, right? The role of the teacher is going to transform, but the teacher is not going to be kicked out, because we still need like a point guard, right? We still need somebody at the focal point of the triangle that is going to lead the charge. And so I absolutely am happy to hear that your organization is working tirelessly to ensure that we update teachers, we provide them with the necessary skill. And for me, even from the entrepreneurial angle, right, the fact that a group of people, a group of teachers decided that, so let's come together and if you like, discuss our issues and find ways and means, right, to see how we can manage them, right, or improve them, is such a point to our collective spirit too, and that enables us to ensure that we are able to face problems together and not individually. And I like how it has transformed into this vibrant and thriving organization that is that trained over 6,500 teachers. That is huge. That is really, really huge. And now you are now recognized by the Ghana Education Service and other key state institutions, giving you the credibility to even push further your mission and vision that you have. It's really heartwarming to hear. I'm happy I got you on to share this rather incredible story of your organization. I want to touch very quickly on the issues you have. Could you highlight on maybe 2 or 3 issues that you think might be holding your organization back a bit?
I think this challenge is faced by most NGOs, non-governmental institutions. While there are some form of commitments for our members, right? There still is, for some of the interventions that we have identified as an organization, the need for funding. There is not that easy landscape for most NGOs. Not to talk about GSET only, many other NGOs as well, to access funding in order to implement the interventions that we have. And then also align once there is a national agenda, and we know that as a country that is projected by the ministries, projected by the agencies of the ministries, and external investors come around, they know this is where we are focusing on as a country. But we have to now, as organizations, try to meet these investors on our own, understand that this is a challenge in the country. That's like a great investment in research to identify the needs. But we have the members, and the members tell us these are the challenges they are facing. That's also some level of research, of course. But we need more funding in order for us to be able to clearly tell that this is a national perspective on this challenge that education is faced within the country. So basically, the main challenge has to do with funding for education-related programs. And sometimes you do get the funding. You have these funding agencies looking for some immediate results, right? And so for education, the way it works, sometimes you may see the results over a long period of time.
Exactly.
Right? When we started, when this country started efforts to integrate technology, it started at a very slow pace. But today you go to almost every school and every learner knows about memory card. They know about SIM card. They know about YAM. Some are even using smartphones. It tells you that for now, we are not focusing on that level of awareness that has been created. But that has been a shift. That it has been an improvement. But we are not measuring that, right? We are measuring something else to make sure that learners can use the devices very well. But how are we measuring the awareness? They are now aware. And so the next step from that awareness is how they use it. But we are looking at results for its usage and not looking at how people are getting aware, how conscious they are of the interventions that are coming. So, of course, more investors need to be focused on funding to support organizations like GSET, of course, because then we are actually engaging with the teachers, and the teachers are telling us what they need instead of us developing interventions meant for them that they don't know about. So funding has been the main challenge in the development. We faced challenges with breaking through the system. When I say breaking through the system, I mean engaging schools, right? But then I think the agencies, the Ghana Education Service and Ministry have been very helpful, because once they were able to collaborate with them on 1 or 2 events and they gained their credibility, they understood how we work and the transparency of our work. We are now able to go into the schools to engage the schools and the teachers, right? That has been solved, but I'm sure that's still a challenge for some of the other NGOs. GSET, we have solved that problem. Our major challenge as an organization now is funding. Once the funding sources come in, always divides. programs that teachers really want to be engaged in, because we have the experts who are actually with us. We call them professional associates at GSET, who actually take some of our programs.
Okay. So I wanted to ask very quickly, in terms of the continuous professional developments, do you only do it for public school teachers, or you do it for both public school and private school teachers?
It's for both. We do
It's for both
teachers, do for both private and then.
Wow. All too soon, we have come to the end of a rather insightful episode. I've thoroughly enjoyed this, but I don't know. I feel like I'll have to call you back. There are two key topics that I want us to have a conversation on, and I think that you'll be best equipped to have that conversation. Noble, thank you so much. Clearly, the optimism, and passion of yourself and your team is evident and infectious, and it's a blessing to have you and your organization. Come into the space to do what it is that you're doing. Thank you so much, for who you are and what you do. Please, 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 in 2024, I know you started on a very, very, very bright note. I participated in your event, and I was happy about how everything was put together and how you were able to bring together a whole host of, EdTech innovators in one space. I want you to keep that fire burning and continue to make transformational change and impact one teacher at a time. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast.
Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity, Kwame, and I'm happy to for the opportunity to share with your audience.
Awesome. Listeners, thank you so much. This was another, like I said, another insightful episode. If you didn't know about the Ghana Society of Education Technology, now you know. You heard it here first on the Let's Talk Education Africa podcast. If there are, organizations looking to collaborate, looking to work with the Ghana Society for Education Technology, GSET, Noble is your man. Please feel free to contact them. They are on social media. They are on LinkedIn. They are on, I believe, on Instagram too as well. Yeah, they are a nice bunch of people, and they are doing some pretty amazing work. And so, until next episode, please stay safe. Cheers.